awards, lots of statistics, but nothing on net income or cash flow. That was something else. So Enron's doing all these wonderful things, the biggest, the most revenues, the awards, but Enron was also a darling of the environmentalist movement. Jeremy Leggett, formerly of Greenpeace, wrote in The Carbon War, quote, "Enron was the company most responsible for sparking off the greenhouse civil war in the hydrocarbon business." In the World Watch Institute, Chris Flavin et al. Noticed how Enron, originally a natural gas company, has made a strong move into renewables and solar with the half purchase of SolarX. Looking back at the awards and the associations where Ken Lay was on the board of directors of different groups, the Environmental Protection Agency gave Enron a Climate Protection Award, the Council on Economic Priorities a Corporate Conscience Award. Lay was on the board and was a driving force of groups like the Pew Center on Global Climate Change, the Heinz Center for Science, Economics, and Environment, and the Business Council on Sustainable Energy. Enron sponsored Earth Day events in the states that the company was involved in, Texas, California, Oregon, and got a lot of publicity for it. Now, Ken Lay in the old days, before Enron, worked for a company, Transco Energy. Most of the natural gas that comes to New York City comes through the pipeline of Transcontinental Gas Pipeline. And at the time, he was a bit of a coal man because Transco had coal investments. But his new business model upon joining Enron was to be a green energy company and to very much focus on natural gas, to make Enron the first natural gas major. And a quotation that is attributed to Ken is very revealing here. Quote, "If there's one thing I've been impressed with over the last decades, it is when the environmental community defines a number one priority, something happens. Not always good, but something." And Enron began quite legitimately touting natural gas over coal on economic and environmental reasons. And Enron devised new products taking the risk out of long-term natural gas contracts where economically you could pretty much lock in a superior price for natural gas than coal. And the utilities, as a matter of fact, because of the incentives of public utility regulation, were choosing coal plants where maybe they should have been choosing gas plants because coal plants were more capital intensive, and given a rate of return, the utilities would make more money with building coal plants than gas plants. So Ken Lay came out with something he called the natural gas standard, a challenge for utility executives to consider natural gas, choose natural gas over coal if it was economically and environmentally superior, which it was at the time when gas prices fell so low. But Ken Lay went far beyond just natural gas, which was a core competency of the business. I have a copy here of Chris Flavin's World Watch paper, Slowing Global Warming, a Worldwide Strategy, from back in 1989, just 1 year after James Hansen sounded the alarm in a national way. And this is interesting. You see the word desk on top. Ken Lay did not keep many things in his desk, but this booklet was in his desk. So he is being influenced by this kid, Chris Flavin. I wonder if Ken Lay's worldview would have been different if he had read a book that came out in 1865 by William Stanley Jevons, A Coal Question. And this book is still relevant today because Jevons very clearly explained why falling water, wind, and biomass cannot fuel an industrial society because you need greater quantities of energy, cheaper energy, and energy that is reliable, that energy you can get all the time. You have bad water years. There can be problems with the wind being intermittent. And he said the future of industrial society had everything to do with coal and, of course, later on, natural gas and oil. Enron made a big play in sustainable energy. They experimented around with natural gas vehicles. That didn't work. SolarX, the solar subsidiary, half owned with Amoco, they sold that to BP. There was a lot of plans to build big solar farms, lots of press releases, but none of these farms ever got built. Enron Wind Company never turned a profit, but Kinley and Enron rescued the U.S. wind industry because Kinetec had gone bankrupt, and Enron bought Zond Energy, which was a one U.S. company that was viable, and they built it up. And Enron later on lobbied hard and got the mandate in the Texas electricity bill that mandated a quota for renewable energy, and now Texas is the national leader. So Enron, in a very important way, rescued and drove the U.S. wind industry. Energy efficiency, we had a group called Enron Energy Services, where we would outsource, we would take over the energy function of major industrial and commercial users, and we'd save them money, and we would make money. That was a plan anyway. It turns out there was a lot of accounting tricks, and the so-called 10% energy savings that was being touted and, of course, reported in the national press was illusory. Fuel cell investment, small, and we were working on firming intermittency and green power contracts, and that never went anywhere. All these areas were money losers. Here's an example. Front page of the New York Times business section back in 1994, solar power for earthly prices. Solar is finally competitive with fossil fuels. That's the message of this article. And this fantastic price of 5.5 cents a kilowatt hour, and we were scratching our heads within Enron, how in the world did they come out with a price that cheap? And there was a lot of accounting tricks behind it. This project never got built, even though it was supported by the Clinton administration. So Enron was touting itself as a green energy company, even a little ahead of BP and John Brown. And Kinley set a vision for Enron, a mini vision, a vision within a vision to become the world's leading renewable energy company. Look at the annual report here, a lot of hype, a lot of press releases. And so it was a great victory for Enron, at least according to Enron's lobbyist at the Kyoto Protocol. And he wrote a very three-page memo back to us at the company. If implemented, the Kyoto Protocol will do more to promote Enron's business than will almost any other regulatory initiative outside of restructuring of the electricity and natural gas industries in Europe and the U.S. The endorsement of emissions trading was another victory for us. The agreement will be good for Enron stock. And indeed, Enron had 7 profit centers around climate alarmism. Natural gas production relative to oil and gas, natural gas transmission and generation relative to oil and coal, energy outsourcing, I talked about that, renewable energy generation, wind and solar, and CO2 trading, because the company was also already a national leader trading SOx and NOx. And we were also pushing environmental outsourcing, where we would do all the things for a utility related to the environment. A lot of slick press releases and brochures, but nothing ever came of that either. Enron's climate change statement here. This was a slick brochure that came out just months before the company went bankrupt. But we had full-time people working on these issues, lobbyists, people within the company. And Kinley saw it as a new frontier, and he was badly wrong. But behind the scenes, Enron was making more money at something else: the trading and taking position with coal. And there's a great story here. Enron started this subsidiary in 1997 and had to recruit new management. And some of our top executives came from St. Louis, which is the coal capital of the United States. And one gentleman joins the company. He moves his family down to hot, humid Houston. And on first week on the job, he's reading these internal memos, how is Enron going to explain to people why we're getting big into coal when we're a green energy company? And he was very concerned and called Jeff Skilling, Enron's president, and arranged a meeting. And he went up and met with Jeff and said, Jeff, you know, what's going on here? I'm reading these memos that Enron is going to downplay its coal investment. You know, what's going on here? You've made a commitment to me. And Jeff looked at him and said, Steve, Enron is a green energy company. The green we like is money. So there was an internal tension at Enron between really sustainable energy and unsustainable energy, the energies that required a lot of government subsidies but still weren't profitable. Analogies between Enron and climate alarmism. Looking back on it, there was a lot of arrogance at Enron, and you've probably seen the book, The Smartest Guys in the Room. Well, we were the smartest guys in the room when it came to climate change and the new energy future. But looking back on it, to see all the things that Enron was doing, and then comparing Enron's arrogance to the arrogance we now see among mainstream scientists or those who refuse to debate or say the debate is over. To me, the number one problem we face today is not statism, government regulation of energy. It is the arrogance that leads to the ideas, the arrogance in the media, among politicians, among scientists, that leads to bad thinking, that leads to bad policy. There's a shared narrative, repeat it, make it true. Enron is a great company. Enron is a great company. It must be true. Arrogance, doubters are dumb. And as an example of arrogance in today's scientific community with the IPCC and Enron, I'd like to draw an analogy. This is Enron's last annual report from 2000, and it's over 50 pages, and way back in very small print, there's a footnote, related party transactions, where it talks about a general partner who's a managing member and a senior officer of Enron. And if you read this, you sort of find out what was happening with Andy Fastow. But of course, it's way back here, and it was this type information, these deals, that brought down the company. You know, if Enron was an honest company, this sort of thing, it's very relevant to shareholders, should have been right at the front. Looking at the most recent IPCC report, way back on page 805, there's a sentence. More generally, the set of available models may share fundamental inadequacies, the effect of which cannot be quantified. Whoa, climate models, they might be wrong, and we don't have any way of knowing, we can't even tell you how wrong they are. Now, this is an incredibly important statement, and it should be up in the policymaker's summary. But this is just an example. And again, the theme I'd like to leave you with is the problem that we have looking at Enron's experience and what we're facing today with climate change is arrogance. How do we get people to have humility, to welcome open debate? And it brought down Enron, and I hope the bad decisions don't bring down the prosperity that we're enjoying today. So with that, I'll conclude. Thank you very much.